Hey, hello, my name is Gosha. Today I wanted to talk about accepting gifts. And when I talk about gifts, I mean here things that relate to hypersensitivity, to being extremely artistic and everything that it entails. So, perfectionism, idealism, and rebellion of some sort. And on the other hand, the phrase that came to my life actually just a year ago, being gifted, or the giftedness, and how I was able to accept this and any more of these kind of traits of feeling like a misfit for quite some time in the past. And it's going to be kind of a personal story, but also I'm just going to weave in the concepts that got me to understand how I was able to accept those gifts and quite overnight. But I want to say that it was not an overnight success. So let's establish that you can't treat something as a gift if you think it's a curse or a punishment, right? So let's say someone brings you a present that seems like it's more work, or like it's too huge for your house, or I don't know, something really bizarre that you don't want and you hate it, and it feels like, why does this person give it to me? It's just trouble for me. Even more so are the gifts that you have, such as the ones I described and many more, like being scattered, like being, visionary, but not being detail-oriented. All these things kind of haunted me at some points in my life. And how I got to accept many of them is through, first, accepting myself as someone different from everyone else, and through learning and knowing how to utilize those gifts. So that makes a huge difference, because if you're a highly sensitive person, the chances are that maybe you were told, but you have this amazing gift of sensitivity, right? But you feel like it's a curse. You feel like, I just want to get rid of this. I just want to feel normal. I just want to feel ordinary. I just want to have thick skin like everyone else. Or maybe, being called gifted. It's so hard for people to accept exactly for that reason, because they have learned throughout their life how rejected they were, how misunderstood they were because of their way of perceiving things, like I did. And if someone had told me prior to having done a lot of inner work that I was gifted, I would say, like, this makes no sense, right? Yeah, how can you accept being called gifted if it feels like a burden? And it had always felt like a burden. Like you couldn't get along with, kids at school. Maybe you were bullied. Maybe your parents rejected you and always criticized you. Maybe everyone told you that you should go on meds, or even, gave you medication because you were so, troublesome to everyone. And you got mirrored all this rejection and intolerance to you just being yourself. And now people tell you that you're gifted, and you just want to say, fuck you, right? What kind of gift that is? Yeah, maybe I can solve whatever kind of things that you are able to solve. Maybe you are artistic and can paint amazing things and you're super idealistic. Maybe you're a super scientist and all that stuff. But if you can't fit into a system that something that you can belong and kind of spread your wings in and claim all the things that you are, but instead you're being told all the time that you're, I don't know, maybe you're stupid actually, because you don't pay attention to what other people are saying. They don't know that you're bored because like you knew what they were saying when you were 5 years old, and now you're just like leaps and bounds ahead of this. So they call you problematic. Or when you explain something on a meta level, like I am, something super philosophical, something super deep, something super exciting and interesting, and everyone in a group, maybe, you know, you're in a new group and wanting to meet people, and everyone looks at you like you're crazy and just rushing to change a subject. So yeah, you will have a hard time accepting this as a gift, right? We all live in a context and we learn about our worth from how others value us, and we learn about all things about ourselves from the gestures and actions and behaviors. Not only just words, which are important, but we pick it up from others and how they respond to our perception when we communicate, when we share something, when we try to connect with people, saying something important to you, and they didn't accept it. So naturally you started kicking yourself for wanting to express it and, like, you know, masking your gifts, being ashamed of things, right? And I know that, you know, I have moments in my past, not so many, because I've always been quite rebellious, but there were times when I wanted to be just an ordinary plain person who didn't have the pressure to do something great, who didn't have the inclination to aim for excellence, who didn't care so much about ideals and art that, you know, for a long time I would be ready to die for art. And all these things may seem naive to so many people, and we learn to treat ourselves as something less. But the thing is, I want to ask, what if everyone else is wrong, but you're right? Right? So I learned about the term giftedness just less than a year ago, several months ago. And it was super easy for me to accept it and say, yeah, I am gifted. Of course I am. It was interesting for me to, you know, read a few articles about it. I didn't even have to read any books or stuff like that, because it just clicked. I knew all that it entailed, because for the previous 10 years, I'd been doing a lot of inner work. So it was easy for me to accept overnight, but I've been working to accept, radically accept all my weird traits, the so-called weird traits, for way before I even heard the label giftedness, which so many of people who are gifted actually don't resonate with. And that's why I wanted to make this video. And my theory, and I think I'm pretty clear on this, so tell me in the comments if I'm wrong, but it makes so much sense. Why people can't accept the term gifted and choose to, you know, say that they have ADHD or something like that, because these are things that people told them. And this represents the burden that they know is a challenge of being gifted. They still have not yet experienced the gift of being gifted. And the gift of being gifted happens, or being highly sensitive, happens when you learn to utilize it and claim it. So radical acceptance, as in, I have it, right? I know this is me. I'm not going to pretend that I'm someone else, right? So this is super important as a first thing. Stopping, to not want to be someone else. I had been doing all kinds of things, 10 years is a long time. I was doing all kinds of practices, self-reflection, journaling, so much healing went into this that I was able to validate my intensity, my ideals. Yeah, there is still a long way to go in my life, and there is so much improvement. I feel like I'm really gifted in so many different ways. And it wouldn't be possible if I hadn't learned to utilize the things that fall into those categories. So let's take high sensitivity. In my situation, it's hypersensitivity, it's super hypersensitivity that it makes me feel tiny changes, tiny distortions in the environment, tiny distortion. I respond to the truth. I want to say it like that. And we, as highly sensitive people, we respond to truth in us. It's like a gauge that when something is off, it's just off. It's just yelling at us that it's off. This person is off, this job is off, this kind of food is off. And we can sense it even without any words being said. We know it, right? So this also is like creating so much overwhelm when you don't know how to use this sensitivity. And it was my trouble. First, for the 3 decades, I was numb. I was completely disassociated. I didn't even feel a high stress that I was constantly in until I was sick, And when I healed myself, what kicked in was that super high sensitivity and anxiety that came with resisting life, because it was overwhelming for quite some time. Like, what do I do with all these flooding emotions and sensations? So it's obvious you can't accept this as a gift, right? If you feel flooded by emotions, if you can't deal with life sensitivity, if you can't be with a group of friends that you would want to be with, or can't go to a concert of a musician that you love, how can you claim this is a gift? It's really hard. But everything changes when you learn how to regulate your emotions, how to use that sensitivity as information, as wisdom. And this is what I've managed to do because I studied mind body medicine for so long for my own purpose. And to know how to use this sensitivity. And when I started to be able to utilize this, then it was like, okay, this is what it is for. Now emotions, even negative emotions, tell me that I need to look inwards, that I shouldn't be getting distracted, that I shouldn't put on Netflix, that I should take time and just, be self-compassionate, or that I should pause work, or that I'm really not fit for this kind of work, right? So emotions tell us about all these kind of things, and sensitivity tell us like, yeah, maybe this partner is not right for you, no matter how much you idolize him or her, you know. And using that sensitivity becomes a gift when you know how to use it and claim it. This is when it becomes a gift. Now, the same thing comes with all what giftedness entails, those high ideals, this different level of perceiving. And you would have to take each trait by trait. But for example, in my life, because I'm talking about personal story, but so theoretically, of course, and so philosophically, this is my nature. And, you know, instead of, you know, getting into groups of people that would roll their eyes as I was trying to explain my ideas, I started recording these videos. I started recording these episodes, and I can express myself in this way. And I can also appreciate myself, because when I speak up about those things, I also hear myself and it gets deeper. So it turns out that I don't really need another person to listen, as long as I listen to myself. Yes, I managed to work as a coach and have people who were interested in these topics, and it helped them. But you can use your gifts in so many different ways without trying to fit them like a, you know, round peg in a square hole. Someone who doesn't want those gifts. You have to try to use those gifts, and not only with people, but it's most important that you accept them yourself and learn how to utilize them in your life. How can you utilize your high idealism? Well, in my life, for example, I learned to use it to live in integrity. Because my idealism is like this gauge, like this navigation system that tells me when I'm not acting out of my integrity, when I'm not living up to what's called the highest self, right? And of course, it's not about being perfect, but it helps me be right for myself and know, not in the way that I have to prove someone that I am right. It's far from it. Actually, it's quite the opposite. You stop needing to be right when you know you're right for your life. And when you make some decisions in your life, for example, for me, it would be choosing topics for this podcast in the way that fits what I feel is important. This is my idealism, and you know, where I know how great it could be for people like us to feel and be accepted. And this helps me, for example, choose topics or the way how I talk about this. The same goes for, you know, being with other people. I don't claim to be perfect. I can be very assertive at this point because I've accepted myself. I've stopped pleasing others. And therefore, it allows me to be with others on my terms. I can help people. I can be present without being overwhelmed. Because I've accepted all these things, okay? And when you've accepted these things, you stop worrying so much about what others are saying or what are their opinions about you, if they're accepting you or if they like you. And if you stop caring, then you validate yourself. And this is when you stop manipulating people, because you don't need their approval. You don't need for them to understand you. And this, again, drags on another benefit, which is you don't exhaust your energy. You don't have to prove yourself. You don't have to force anyone to admit you're right, because you know you're right. So there are so many amazing things that come with accepting your gifts. But like I say, you need to kind of make effort into thinking, how can I utilize it? Or maybe it's already happening quite naturally in your life. In just thinking in ideals, how would I want to live my life? I care so much about nature. It seems like I would want to kind of move to a smaller town and maybe stop worrying about all that living in a big city, right? But I was afraid to, kind of leave this behind because there are so many jobs and blah, 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 opportunities. But maybe when you move to a small town, you're much more closer to a community, you're closer to nature, and all of a sudden things start becoming like easier. So using all kinds of things that you might think are like a curse makes them gifts. And I want to speak here about Harry Potter because when I lived in London, there was a play about Harry Potter called The Cursed Child. And I am not an expert, and I just barely once watched Harry Potter, so please don't judge me for it. But what I know that this analogy is quite perfect for people like us, because we also think that we're cursed by the gifts that we have, that by being so different. But he was only able to claim his full power as a wizard when he started being able to utilize his gifts. And that's exactly the same. When you learn how to utilize and use your high intensity, when you know how to use your emotions to inform you about what's the next best course of action, how to use whatever traits you have, like being highly artistic or, even being rebellious. I'm sure you can use any of these traits in your life, and this is when you will have an easier time with claiming them. And I know this video was supposed to be more about me, but I think I always go quite philosophical, and this is how I am. I always philosophize, and I always go meta, I always go into theory, I always dig deeper and analyze things, and just get sidetracked by various things. So I hope that was helpful. I hope it got you thinking about the ways you can radically accept what you have, and think how you've been maybe claiming already and using some of the gifts, and how it helped you accept it, and how maybe you can still accept by utilizing other gifts, how you can use them, how they can be practical in your life and handy, and helping you become more of yourself, because this is eventually what is the meaning of this life, to just become fully ourselves, not to shrink and fit into this weird world, but to just claim fully yourself and the stuff that you have. Okay, so let me know any comments, any questions if you have them. I'll try to answer and reply. And for now, thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you very soon.